You're listening to Real Investor Radio with Fuhr and Jack BeVier, where we cover advanced real estate investing topics to help you stay ahead of the curve in your real estate investing business. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Real Investor Radio. I'm Fuhr, joined again by Jack BeVier. Jack, good to see you.
Absolutely. You too, sir.
We are here for episode 23, and we're just basically having a discussion today of some of the news items that we've seen in terms of the market. Some surprising, Jack, some not so surprising, but we'll talk a little bit on this episode about single-family rents, sort of the price of money right now in terms of Fed policy, and this is an article from Business Week that we'll be talking about. And then I'd like to jump into our good friend, Nick Jury. I say good friend. I've never met the guy. He seems like a good guy, though, who runs RE Venture. It's a pretty cool piece of software for real estate investors. He listed the 10 best cities in America, Jack, that are still appreciating right now. So we'll go through that and have some fun with that. But you mentioned on the last episode about the Real Investor Roundtable, which is a mastermind that you and Fred Lewis, your partner here at Dominion, have been running since about 2016, Jack?
Yeah, past 5 or 6 years, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you mentioned that you guys had just came off of a meeting over the end of last week. And what were your takeaways there, man? That's some of the best investors in the country that you guys have assembled over the years, really top operators. Give me a sense of what these guys are going through in their markets all over the country, what you were hearing from them, and sort of some of your better takeaways. Because I know you always come away with better for that meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, like you said, we organized it about 5 or 6 years ago. Fred really takes lead on it, and he has put together a group of about 30, we think are high-level operators. We run it, it's a mastermind. We get together to compare ideas, compare notes, help each other's businesses. We run it as a nonprofit because for us, the point was the ideas. Like we could make much more money off of great ideas than we can off of mastermind dues, though there are other great masterminds out there that run on a for-profit basis. No knock on anybody, that's just how we've chosen to run it. And our goal has been to gather the best operators and thinkers about their businesses into one place. We get together every 4 months. We've been doing it in Baltimore for a while. We also used to do some meetings in Dallas to make it easier on the West Coast folks. But the point is, we've gotten to know each, and everyone gets very close to each other in the room. The culture is sharing ideas, expressing vulnerability. No one's trying to one up each other. Everyone in the room's a killer. So who gives a shit? And and really just kind of share ideas and pain points, and and get feedback from other folks who are operating at a high level. And so we've got operators in the room there who are flipping several hundred houses a year that they're just buying either through foreclosures or direct mail, through wholesalers, the courthouse steps. Got a lot of build to rent operators, folks who have started in and pivoted to new construction to find greater margins, folks who were wholesaling at a very high level to the funds when they were buying in earnest over the past 5-10 years. A lot of folks who are lending. What's that?
Multifamily guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Multifamily guys. There's also a fair amount of folks who do residential, but they also do some other stuff in small commercial. And so we'll talk about self-storage. We'll talk about what's going on in industrial and flex, other interesting opportunities yet to come in the office space. It's a bunch of real estate entrepreneurs that have put together great businesses, and we're all there to help each other, just do better.
The thing that I've attended, and the thing that I thought was fascinating was it wasn't just a room full of wholesalers. It wasn't just a room full of guys who have learned how to do fix and flips. It really is guys who may have started off as a wholesaler or a fix and flipper, but real operators who have learned to pivot to take advantage of opportunities in the market.
Yeah,
and the cycles.
Yeah, absolutely, and at different points in time. we've all got our areas of specialty, just based off of what we like to do and also what the opportunities are in our local markets, right? Because, California is massively different than Chicago, is massively different than Charlotte.
Sure.
And we've got folks, from all those different kind of places. But anyway, so
Big
I
takeaways.
started off by, we kicked off the thing just talking about like kind of the macro economy and, seeing kind of all these different potentially conflicting, right, like signals that we're getting right now. You've got super pessimists to super optimists right
Mm-hmm.
now in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a survey of the room, and the room was, kind of like, it had the whole spectrum of differing views on how the next 12 to 18 months were going to go. And you got people who are doing different kinds of pivots based off of those views. And so, some people are going to be right and some people are going to be less right. And it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out and who's like who the relative winners and losers as a result of those predictions. But something that we saw is a lot of pivoting going on right now. And a lot of it people started to think about it a year ago. In the first quarter, second quarter of this year, really started to execute some pivots. We've done our own significant pivoting in both the real estate side of things and on the lending side of things, to set ourselves up for what we think is coming over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And you saw a lot of that in the room. Some folks are completely out. Just, we're not buying anything right now. I'm just going to
Total
stack
pencils
cash.
down.
Yeah, pencils down. I'm stacking cash. I'm waiting for opportunities. There's going to be blood. You got other folks who have pivoted from selling build to rent to institutions. Now they're selling 100% to retail. To homeowners. So they were, they're doing 300 houses a year, and that used to be 650 property packages, and now it's 300 individual retail sales, right? Like that's easier said than done, that pivot.
That's a big pivot.
You got a lot of guys who have slowed down and are lending more right now as a result, because they think that's just a better risk-adjusted return for the capital that they want to deploy. And then we've got some guys who think that, hey, who are like ramping up right now because they think that everyone's wrong and that everyone's leaning back. It's gotten easier to buy, especially over the course of the last 60 days. We've seen that a bit.
Have you?
And they're leaning into that and saying, hey, now all of you guys are scared and I'm jumping in right now and ramping things up. Yes, it's a difficult operating environment. It's a difficult cost of capital environment, but I'm such a good operator that it doesn't matter. And I'm going to build my platform and take market share from the folks in my market while they're all scared and playing, and going skiing. So it was really interesting to see the whole spectrum of opinions and pivots in the room. And so that's what we talked about for 2.5 days. It was great.
So in terms of Dominion, one of the largest buyers and owners of residential real estate, I would think, in Maryland. What are you seeing in terms of competition over the last couple months, Jack?
Yeah, I would say that I think that last year, our cost of acquisition of a property skyrocketed throughout the course of the year. We probably started the year at $4,000 as cost of acquisition of a property, whether that's direct mail or pay-per-click or social media ads or buying from other wholesalers. We were probably in like the $3,000-$4,000 range. By the end of the year, we were up to like $12,000-$13,000, which is frankly unsustainable in our price point market. The first quarter of 2023, we saw a big, I would say, a seller-driven capitulation, where sellers were all of a sudden realized, hey, this isn't going to get better soon, and these rates are going to stay high for a long time. And I didn't want to do anything in the third or fourth quarter of 2022, but you know what? I need to sell mom's house. So yeah, let's let it go. And so we saw a lot of activity in the first and second quarter of the year. And then in the third, when interest rates continued to increase, I think a little bit more fear was felt in the economy or about the economy. And we've really seen that transaction volumes continue to decrease. And so our cost of acquisition started really climbing back up. I would say over the past 60 days, I've seen a little bit of not seller capitulation, but competitor capitulation, where there are
Mm,
folks who are now investors who are now, hey, you know what, I'm pencils down, and I
mm,
don't think it's the right time. Maybe they, they saw the rate on that last DSCR loan and they realized that they're paying all their net income to the lender and they're not keeping anything in their pocket, and they're going to wait until rates come down, or their bank shut them off, which we've been hearing a
mm,
ton of that. Um, or they're concerned about what value is going to be, and they think that real estate values are going to come down because of this high sustained interest rate environment, and so they don't think it's a good time to flip, even because V may come down 10 points, 10, 15 points. And so I think because of that, everyone's probably, in general, investors are buying less per capita, and the cumulative effect of that, and some people are even pencils down and buying nothing.
mm.
And so the cumulative effect of that is a bit less competition. Now, great, I can get my rental property for a 8 cap instead of a 7 cap. Well, I'm still paying eight and change to the bank. So like,
Right.
what good does that do me? I think it's a little bit, I see a little bit more optimism on the flipping side of things. One thing that, sorry, I'm running on a little bit here, but I
No,
just
no,
thought
go
of
ahead.
this. One thing that struck me about this story, the narrative of the Great Recession, the wake of the Great Recession, was that real estate values crashed as if it happened in a month.
Mm.
But and it didn't. It didn't happen over a month. It happened over the course of 4 years.
Yes, it did.
But the narrative of a lot of folks is that 2008 killed me. Well, 2008 didn't kill you. It was the combination of 2007 and then 8 and then 9 and then 10 that killed you,
Right.
in succession. But if you were a flipper in the wake of the Great Recession,
I
and
was.
and you were, exactly, and you had the discipline to take your lumps and move that house and just get and move on to the next one, even if you didn't make what you thought you were going to make, you were absolutely catching a falling knife, and that is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But if you look at the Case-Shiller index for real estate values, um, it's not that we had a 40% drop and so it killed everybody. It's that we had a 10% drop and then another 10% drop and then another 10% drop and then a 10% drop year over year over year over year. And cumulatively, we had a 40% drop. But if
Mm.
your flipping margins are 20%, which they should be, right, minimally on an annual basis, you
Yep.
can still make money, not a lot, right? Like, or maybe you're just treading water after expenses and everything, but that's not what kills you, right? Like if you're disciplined about flipping, and if you're disciplined about operating a 20% margin flipping business, even in the wake of the Great Recession, we never saw a year where prices dropped by more than 10% or by more than 15%. And so that didn't kill you. It's the lack of discipline to not just sell the house where the market clears.
Mm.
Or if you screwed up as an operator and you didn't put out a quality product, that could kill you, where the house just no one wants it because it's not a nice flip. But if you put out a quality flip, even in a down market, you can operate. You can recycle your capital and go buy the next one better, and then go buy the next one better, and go buy the next one better. I
Yep.
know that's a lot easier said than done, but I'm trying to like frame that because people think that a down or a soft real estate market is an existential threat for flippers, and I don't see it that way. I think that you have to put out a great product, and you have to be disciplined about not trailing the market down. Like take the price drops to just get your cash back, and then go back into the as is market and buy something cheap, buy it better next time. But
Yeah.
I think that that's still a way to get through softer times like this. And so that's the reason that we're still buying, is we're just flipping a lot more
I think an
than keeping
interesting.
rentals.
It's a great point, and I think I've made it on the show before. It would be really great to go back and sort of look at how wholesale prices of houses, for lack of a better term, sort of decreased significantly over those 4 years. And so what I found was we could put out a quality product, put it on the market, just like the house next door that had not been rehabbed at all. And houses were still moving very quickly, mainly as a result of a fair lending environment, lots of government incentives. I didn't personally, Jack, I didn't really see any significant downturn in demand during that period. We put out a great product. It was priced right. The thing moved in 14, 21 days, every
Agreed.
single one of them. And we made phenomenal margins during that 2009 to 2012 time period. It was it felt predictable. The environment felt predictable, yet at the same time, every news source, every talking head, every person was telling you how horrible the environment was. That's not what I saw on the ground back then. Certainly not in the Maryland area, in the DMV area, which again, admittedly, we were, we weren't hit nearly as bad as other areas.
Yeah.
Baltimore City, yes, but maybe not Maryland at large.
We weren't Phoenix. We weren't. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think you make a really great point there. Better operators, buying better, you can overcome the capital constraints at that point.
I was with, I had dinner last night with a group of folks who were active, and one of them is one of the probably the biggest auctioneer in Maryland of as is properties, and his commentary was that as is pricing over the past 6 months has come down like materially. A house that was, if a shell in the city was gonna, sold for 60 grand 6 months ago, today it's 30. And that, there's, and at the same time, we are seeing some softness in certain price points and neighborhoods in Baltimore. And so there is still some concern, right? Like if you buy a shell and then it takes you, 6-9 months to get that on the market, you're taking, that's a long 6 months right now, 6-9 months right now. So maybe there's
a lot of crystal ball to look into there.
Yeah, exactly. So, maybe that's just a segment of the market it is particularly high risk. And so that's a function, or that's a cause of that significantly decreased as is pricing. But that's definitely happening right now. And so folks who bought, if you bought a piece of real estate and you haven't done anything with it yet, you bought it a year ago and you haven't done anything with it yet, it hasn't been a good year for as is pricing. I think it's starting to come down, and with competitors, I think, continuing to get weeded out over the course of the next year, it's going to be a thinning of the herd, which should, though, be good for margins for those who are the market's best operators.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Hey, let's jump into this quick report here from our buddy Bill McBride. Bill, we'd love to have you on the show. This was just a very small piece that he put out called Single Family Rent Results. This was basically, it was a little surprising because, if you kind of, if you're looking from afar, you would think tough economy, rents are probably going down, some maybe significantly. That's not what we're seeing in this report here. And it says below is a table showing the year-over-year percent changes in 3 widely followed rent indexes. They are the Apartment List Rent Index, or the ALRI, the Zillow Rent Index, and the CoreLogic Rent Index. And basically what they found, Jack, was that the only one of them, which was the Apartment List Rent Indexed, showed a year-over-year decline. The other two showed that rents have been stable, if not increasing. Correct? Are you looking at that?
I thought that was really interesting. He pulls the public company data from Invitation Homes and American Homes for Rent, which, of course, they're not active in all markets. They're in the Sun Belt. They're in newer construction. They're institutionally operated. They're very focused on pushing rents, right? Because they're running it like a multifamily REIT as opposed to a mom and pop landlord. So they're a different cut of the market, but their rents are up on average 7% year over year, which I thought was, that's public data, like of their internal performance. So it's remarkably bullish. And certainly not what I expected anyway to see. I think that apartment data makes sense that it's the softest side of things. We talked about on the previous episode a concern about multifamily oversupply. And so though that's going to bleed into the single family space because they are directly competitive products, certainly you're going to see it first in the multifamily competition. And just anecdotally, like anecdotally from the mastermind, like I heard certain folks saying like, hey, yeah, in my market, rents are down probably 5%. I mean, they were up 30, but now they're down 5 from the 30. So I think back a little bit of room,
Yeah, so I think what the takeaway from this report, which I would point everybody to that to the Calculated Risk blog run by Bill McBride. It's just always great info. That rents are clearly decelerating, yet they're still up, which I think was a bit of a surprise to both of us.
And again, the X factor I think is so the consumer's still strong, the consumer's still able to pay. Courts are back up and running, so rent court is a thing again. And I think the X factor is recession. But we're also not in a recession yet. Yet.
Right.
And so what factor does a recessionary environment, a weaker jobs market have on rents? Do they flatline? Do they decrease? And of course, that's going to be a sub-market question too. Austin's going to be a very different story than Indiana.
Agreed. Let's go through this interesting YouTube video put out by Nick Jury from RE Venture. Nick puts out some interesting content, and I just thought this was a fun one to go through, Jack. If we listen to, kind of get our feelings, and we sort of, we only get our news from one source, you would think that, markets are kind of sideways in terms of price, in terms of value, if not declining in most places. Nick put out a list of the 10 top appreciating markets in the country. And in typical Price is Right fashion, Jack, I'm going to go 10-1. So we'll start with the least and then go to the best. And if I ever do it the opposite way, I need you to call me out on that, because no one
but
should ever go.
But it's still the top 10, right?
Top
still
10,
the top
yes,
10. Okay.
It
so
is
they're
the
all
top
great.
10.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So, all right, number 10, Knoxville, Tennessee, Jack, up 1% a month over the past several months. The average home price being about $330,000 in Knoxville, which is still overvalued historically by about 37%. So Knoxville, Tennessee, number 10, Jack. I would think Knoxville would be benefiting from the fairly large influx of people moving there during COVID, and sort of, I think Knoxville has actually been increasing over the past several years in terms of its population. Number 9, San Diego. San Diego still appreciating, Jack, by 7.5% year over year, with the average home price for a 2-1 being $900,000 currently.
That's
but
wild.
Still appreciating. Number 8. Do you want to have a guess at any of these? Do you want to throw out a guess at some city that might be on the list?
You said San Diego was in the top 10, so I immediately discount my ability to guess what the next one's going to be. I have no idea.
This one's going to blow your mind. I would have thought that most of these would be probably some of the northeastern states or some of the northeastern cities, and then the California. I don't know. But Milwaukee, Wisconsin would have not shown up on my radar, Jack. But that's also up about 7.5% year over year, Milwaukee. Number 7, New Haven, Connecticut. Where by the way, the home of the greatest pizza in the world. You need to get up there. Average home price in New Haven is about $347,000, and their population is fairly stable there. Number 6, Trenton, New Jersey. Up 9% year over year. Why are we not investing in Trenton, Jack? It's crazy.
I love and hate these lists. Like they're like totally clickbait, but like you put those 5 cities on on a list and tell me like, hey, what do these 5 cities have in common? And I would not have guessed that they were positive home price appreciation.
Right. Yeah. Well, it only gets better from here. Number 5, Savannah, Georgia. Again, Savannah is one of those towns that is constantly increasing in population. A lot of people moving there. There's only 700 houses on the market currently, so incredibly low inventory in Savannah,
How do you
Georgia.
explain Trenton? Then how do you explain Trenton? People aren't moving to Trenton. No one's
they're
moving
not.
to Trenton.
Only the proximity to New York. And I think, isn't Princeton there? Big college town. A lot of in common with this whole list is college towns and military, big military towns. Yeah, San Diego notwithstanding, right? I'm sorry. So Savannah, Georgia, average price is $317,000, which is still lower than the national average for home prices, which makes it a little bit more affordable as well. And I think the wages there are fairly decent. Number 4, a town that is much maligned over the past at least 20 years with a lot of companies moving out. Syracuse, New York, up 8.1% year over year. And that is one where, I'm sorry, inventory historically low with only 700 houses on the market. That was not Savannah. Number 3, even more surprising, Rochester, New York, Jack, up 8.2% year over year. Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
No offense to our friends in Rochester. I don't see it. Number 2, Fayetteville, North Carolina, up 9% and up 200% since 2017, but still rising.
Wow.
So, what did I say? Fayetteville, North Carolina. Also, I believe that's home of Fort Bragg, which is now Fort Liberty. And that's about, I think, 60,000 people on that base down there. So no shortage of folks that want to live in Fayetteville. And number 1, Jack, any guess? I'll tell you, it's in the Northeast.
Greatest city in America, Baltimore. Greatest city in America.
That's what it says on every bench.
It's on the benches.
Every park bench. Here we go. Number 1, Hartford, Connecticut, up 9.2% year over year. Shocking.
All of these are cities that I wouldn't have expected you to say, because the past 10 years has been a conversation about home price appreciation driven by domestic migration, right, from the Northeast and blue states down to the South and Southeast. So like Tennessee, sure, like that makes sense to me. North Carolina, that makes sense to me. But you're talking about New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York being, having 5 of the top 10, and San Diego, a super high cost per square foot market, being on there. That's just doesn't fit the narrative that I would have expected you to say.
Well, if you take a town like Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where they've had a net outflow of population for at least 25 years, why would the price of housing be appreciating at 7.5% year over year? It's the craziest thing to me. And so I think go ahead.
Is that just a function of, I mean, maybe it's just a function of like, there's just such little transaction volume happening because everyone in the Northeast refinanced, and so that no one's putting anything on the market. And while in this 6-month period, housing prices are up because there is still some demand and just no supply. Is that a trend that is going? Is that a trend, or is that just a data point? And if you pull it 6 months from now, it'll be a completely different list of 10 cities.
I think that's a great question to ask Nick when he comes on the show. Yeah, awesome. Nick, is this a blip in the radar? Is this video going to make you cringe 6 months from now, or because it'll be a whole separate set of 10? Or are these actually 10 great cities in America where people, where we could expect more appreciation? I think if you listen to the whole video, it's about 16 minutes. A lot of this had to do with just a severe lack of inventory in a lot of these towns with still, fair demand. And some of these are still very affordable in terms of average house price versus wages. So I think it makes them a little bit more attractive for folks to be, the influx, right? And then obviously the proximity to good jobs in terms of military or, the universities.
Land constrained markets too, right? Like they're not handing out permits in anywhere. You just said.
I can't think of it.
I feel like that exacerbates the supply. When there's a favorable supply demand dynamic that supports housing price increases, the fact that you can't build any new houses to compete with the existing home inventory is probably a positive factor in short-term home price appreciation or long-term home price appreciation.
Yeah, I think too, it kind of speaks to a little bit of what we were saying with regards to the market back during the 2008 through 12 time period, where it would be easy to look from afar and say, oh, there's nothing good. There's no bright spots. If I pick up a paper, I turn on the internet, there's just nothing compelling for me to jump into the market as an investor. When in fact, we're looking at 10 markets across the country right now that, they might be tough to be buying good deals in, but they're still in appreciating environments. And I think to Nick's credit, he also pointed out, he has this great map on RE Venture where it shows sort of the heat and the cold, the top markets and the bad, and they're usually defined by some shade of red or some shade of blue. So the dark blue would be, the better markets, the red would be the tougher markets. And so he did mention, some of the tougher areas in the country right now, the toughest hit states are, believe it or not, all out west. The Utah, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, and Washington State are all some of the toughest markets in the country right now, in terms of depreciating values or stagnant values.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I thought that was a fun little exercise to go through. The last thing I wanted to go over today, Jack, was this brief story that I found in Business Week. There's a lot of talk, is the price of money going up? Is it staying the same for a while, or will it be going down? And I'm sure that you guys had a chance to talk about where you thought rates would be heading, what the Fed would do. Any discussion like that during RIR, during the mastermind, Jack?
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually, we probably do it every time. And we referenced that, I think it was a year ago. We took a survey of the room where you thought the prime rate was going to be, the prime bank rate was going to be a year from now. And so fast forward to today, and and it's at, I think it's at 8.25 right now, 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the most kind of like, pessimistic view in the room was that number. So the Fed has, outshot all of our expectations on what, in terms of increasing rates. And there's this resource that I like to refer to. It's US Treasury Yield Curve.com. Super nerdy website, right? And all it is this cool little app that shows you what the yield curve looks like, and you can toggle the date, and it'll tell you what the yield curve looked like on that date. And so, you can see when the yield curve, you can look back and see, hey, when did the yield curve invert? When did we really did people really start to get concerned about an upcoming recession? And you look at if you're a nerd like me and you play with it and you go back in time, what is the only thing that is true about it is that we've always been wrong. We have been very wrong. And this is like, the yield curve is like the compilation of like the best minds in finance and real estate and in the economy. Like if you knew better, you can make it about what the yield curve was going to look like. You can make a pure bet and make a lot of money if you're better than everybody else. And that hasn't happened because everyone's been wrong, and wrong by a lot for the past 5 years. And so,
how so?
Just the shape. The shape just keeps changing. Where they thought 5-year rates were going to be 5 years ago, are nowhere close to where 5-year rates where rates are today.
I see.
A year ago, what the 1 year was is nowhere close to where rates are today. So what we were guessing the rates should be, were just wrong. And that's a big reason as to why the price of mortgage-backed securities has decreased significantly. What got a lot of banks into trouble back in the spring was just not having interest rates hedged appropriately. The yield curve is kind of the expression of all those cumulative bets. So anyway, I say all that to say that I have no idea what rates are going to do in the future, and it's been a fool's errand to try and guess that. And I'm not aware of anyone who has been consistently right about it, because what they should have been doing is put their money where their mouth is, and they'd have been retired by now.
A couple episodes ago, I don't remember the exact conversation, but you talked about sort of like you didn't see any sort of compelling reason for the Fed to be lowering rates anytime soon. You still feel that way?
Yeah, kind of two thoughts on that. One is that there's in the bullish narrative of the economy, there's this logical connection that people make that I don't understand. They take a leap that I don't understand, which is once at some point in the future, once inflation comes down, the Fed will drop rates. The Fed will start dropping rates, and once the Fed starts dropping rates, ... And I'm like, whoa, why would the Fed? Why is it a foregone conclusion that the Fed is going to drop rates if they don't drive us into a recession where where they're hitting above target levels of unemployment? We're far from that.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going. I don't see any reason why they would want to drop rates. If they drop rates, that's like that's their main tool, right? Like when rates were down at 1%, close to zero, they ran, that's their bullets, right? Like they don't have any way to affect the economy when rates are low. And so they had to start buying mortgage-backed securities and treasuries and put them on their balance sheet in order to be able to do something to try to spur an economy when they had a low interest rate environment. So for them, being in a higher interest rate environment is having a full chamber, or full magazine rather of bullets to, if we get driven into a recession, actually do something and be able to pull us out of that. So this idea that the Fed wants to drop rates, just doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. And they've had such a protracted battle against labor, in terms of labor being the driving force in causing inflation, and which has been their battle against inflation. I just think that they're going to get rates down to 2% and then make sure they stay there. And a little recession is just fine with them. Let's just change the psychology of American labor, put labor back into its place, so to speak, because that's the only way that they can then concede 2% inflation on a consistent basis, which is what, Powell wants his legacy to be. Yeah. So for me, this whole jump to next year, the Fed's going to start dropping rates, unless you think we're in a hard recession and they way overshoot, then I don't understand why you would should include that statement in the next sentence.
Yeah,
that's one thing.
The Bloomberg, was it Bloomberg Business Week report? Their whole conjecture here is, weak economic growth, a significant slowdown. You may see the Fed react. One of the most important reasons for the drop in the interest rate over the 60s and 70s was the gross domestic product expanded at an average of almost 4% a year, thanks to a combination of the swelling workforce in the early part of the period and rapid productivity gains. But by the early 2000s, those forces were petering out. We were offshoring factories and jobs. And in the wake of a global financial crisis, the GDP growth slumped to around 2%, which appears to be exactly where Powell wants it to be, kind of keeping that GDP at roughly 2%. So that's the real question. Will the economy continue to slow to that 2% rate?
Well, I think he wants inflation to be at 2%. He'd love a strong economy. He'd love a 4% growth GDP growth rate as long as prices stay stable.
Yes, I'm sorry. Correct. So yeah, I mean, I love I love to talk more, Jack, about this theory of there's no real compelling reason for them to do anything with rates currently, and that is all of the bullets in the chamber. I think you make a really great point there. That's what they have to fight this economy with.
Yeah, that's what they have to move the needle. They never had a mandate. I think I was just reading stuff that, like, my impression is that they are uncomfortable with the amount of both treasuries and mortgage-backed securities that are on their balance sheet, the Fed's balance sheet. That was something that they did in the wake of the Great Recession because it was a housing market driven recession. And so that was a tactical thing they could do to try to bolster the housing market, get mortgage rates down. So they bought mortgage-backed securities. That was never their mandate. They were never supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to do that. And now here we are 15 years later, and they haven't been able to get them off their balance sheet. I feel I'm under the impression that a number of the number of the governors are the FDIC board governors, the Fed board governors are uncomfortable with those balance sheet holdings. And so I think they're just going to let them. I don't think they're coming back into that market. I don't think they're going to be a buyer of mortgages for, I don't know, maybe ever again. So anyway, that doesn't give, that's they were a huge player. They were a market moving player in mortgage markets, and they're out. And I think they're going to stay out.
What are you excited about right now? What excites you as an operator in both, single family buying, in the single family residential business, as well as a lender in the business? What are you excited about?
Yeah,
what do you have to look forward to every day, Jack?
Yeah. You need something, right? I think that competition is getting weaker, and that's going to lead to a widening in flipping margins over the course of the next year. You're going to have to balance that against falling values, or potentially falling values. So not a riskless thing. But if you're a good flipper, and I think we are a good flipper, we are a good operator as far as flipping houses goes, then I think that business will come back. We had a ton of fun doing that from 2011 to 2018. By 2019, it had gotten extremely competitive, and flipping margins got, dropped down to, a razor's edge. And then we had a whole bunch. Now that got bailed out because of a whole bunch of home price appreciation in 2020 and 2021, which kind of just bailed everybody out. But by 2019, the flipping business had become very, very competitive. And I think that this higher interest rate environment is going to weed out some competition and get it back to that you can be a flipper without home price appreciation bailing you out, just as a good operator. So I like that business. It's fun. We like putting out beautiful product. I like getting deals, and we like creating beautiful product. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that business.
What about as a lender?
Yeah, on the lending side of things, it's really interesting. The market has moved towards balance sheet lenders, so folks lending their own money. First position lenders, bridge, whether that, bridge lenders or DSCR. If you want to hold paper, if you're able to hold paper for 30 years, no one is, right? Like, that's just an institutional thing. But they're charging like really high rates. They're getting paid very well to lend secured by real estate, which I think is a great bet. On the bridge loan side, so as like a private lender, as a fix and flip lender,
Mhm.
Those rates are up back to where they were, 7-8 years ago. And what hasn't favored is, if you want to grow your lending business, though, it's really hard to grow your lending business right now, because then you have to use other people's money, and other people's money is very expensive right now.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's lots of people who would love to lend us money at 9-10%. But we're not lending at 14 and 4 or 13 and 3. We're just trying to lend to the best operators who are still in the 11 and 2, 12 and 2 market. And some folks lower than that, even still. Some competitors lower than that, even still. So you can't make very much money borrowing money from other people at 10% and then lending it out at 11 and 2. But if you're just lending your money, I think you can do, you can get a very safe 11 and 2, 12 and 2. An unlevered, 13, 14% on your money is I think very attractive. So lending our own money, and I think a pivot towards flipping, that's kind of what we're doing right now.
How much of the talk at the Real Investor Roundtable centered around capital, finding better sources of capital, things like that?
Yeah, the finding better sources of capital is a toughie right now. I think that there is a shift back towards the private lending market,
Yeah.
like borrowing from friends and family and just folks that you meet, and having private corporate debt, secured or unsecured, just depending on your deal. I think that's become a much more interesting, a much more important part of real estate investors' balance sheets. If you don't have some friends and family, or at least just, like rich doctor guy that you met and he likes you, money on your balance sheet, I think it's a mistake, because it's sticky, and it hasn't moved up in price that much. Like 2 years ago, you borrowed that money at 10%. Today, you borrow that money at 11?
Right.
Interest rates are up 500 basis points, but the cost of private capital is up like 100, maybe. And so that's, it's very attractive from the borrower's perspective relative to everybody else. Like the bank will lend you money, but bank might lend you money rather, but they're going to lend you money at 8.5%, 9%. Your private lender makes it a little bit easier, but they're going to charge 13, 14. But your rich uncle will still charge you 10, and with like very little strings attached. That seems like good money right now.
Yeah.
So I think that people are borrowing more private money, and I think that real estate investors should continue to look for opportunities to add private lending to their own balance sheet. And if you're a self-respecting real estate investor and you can't deploy capital above a 10 in this world, I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you, but I think you can find good loans at 12 and 2. So like take the money on at 10, lend it out at 12 and 2. And then if you want to use it for your projects, sell that bridge loan to Torak or somebody. And then you've got that 10% money to do what you want to do with the interesting deals that are going to present themselves over the course of the next 12 months. So I think it's like build up the balance sheet a little bit, and then like be patient with an opportunistic eye. That's us right now.
Yeah, the final question would be, do you feel like there's just that's what a lot of the better guys are out there doing, just finding as much capital at good prices right now?
There's definitely a segment, I would say, of the operators that's a theme, I would say, in the higher volume operators that we were hanging out with. Depending on, though, the caveat to that being depending on how good or bad you think the next 12 months are going to be from an economic point of view, people are either doing a lot of that or just a little bit of that. But yeah, that's definitely a theme.
Okay. Well, dude, that's all I've got for today. You have anything else you want to add?
No, man. Good discussion. Great to see you. Looking forward to the next one. And as always, enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. We love your comments below or anywhere where you can comment. Love to hear from you. I need to start checking out the comments a little bit more for folks that are chiming in. We'd love to hear from you. This has been Real Investor Radio. I'm Craig Fuhr with Jack BeVier. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you again soon.